Welcome to the DSO Hygienist podcast. This podcast is for everyone in the DSO space. Whether you're a hygienist, dentist, assistant, or leader, we're here to bring you expert insights, real-world strategies, and conversations to help you thrive. I'm your host, Christine Deal, and together we'll explore how to elevate patient care, grow professionally, and navigate the ever-evolving world of DSOs. Let's get started. Dr. Avi Patel is a dentist, educator, and founder of Clear Aligner Advisor, based in New York. A graduate of NYU College of Dentistry, Dr. Avi experienced burnout early in his career. Discovering clear aligners transformed his life. Within 6 months, he generated $250,000 in aligner production and regained his freedom and fulfillment. Today, he helps dentists and DSOs gain clarity, confidence, and consistency with aligners through his proven systems and courses, empowering them to grow their practice without adding chair time and to rediscover the joy in dentistry. Buying a dental practice? Here's what no one tells you. It's not just about the numbers. It's about the people. And if you lose them, you lose trust, culture, and production. That's where the DSO team transition comes in. We help you stabilize your staff, align systems, and retain your top talent, so your new practice runs smoothly from day one. Smooth transitions, stronger teams, real results. Visit DSOteamtransition.com and download your free transition checklist today. I want to welcome Dr. Avi to the program. How are you today, Dr. Avi?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Well, how we do this is we really just get right into the questions. So I'm going to start. Now, you've built a very unique business and you help doctors gain confidence with the clear aligners. But what inspired you to create the model and step away from traditional dentistry?
Yeah. For me, it was basically creating something that I wish existed. And then so kind of just diving into that a little bit, what drew me into the profession of being a dentist was honestly my uncle. So I grew up, I thought I was going to be in the NBA. I was like, I'm destined for it. There's no way I don't make it. Kobe Bryant was my favorite player. And then, I get into high school and I go from one of the tallest to one of like the shortest people. For whatever reason, all my classmates were significantly taller. They all grew into that summer going into high school. And then, I realized on the basketball team, like, all right, maybe I need to do something else here. And so, my parents are Indian or were Indian. And so they were like, hey, doctor, dentist, or lawyer or engineer. And I'm like, okay, cool. So my uncle was a dentist. I went up and shadowed him. And, I really liked the way that he lived his life. He was always like in a good headspace, super positive, super fun. Traveled a lot, nice house, nice car. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is, let's see what this whole dentistry thing is about. And then I saw him work with his patients and like, his patients loved him. People would come into pain. They would leave feeling great. I'm like, all right, I think I could see myself doing this. And then I was at a dinner party, that he was hosting while I was shadowing him. And then one of his friends was a neurosurgeon and he was talking to me in the corner and asking me, hey, you're going to go to med school, dental school. And then, I asked him like, by the way, like, why are you talking to me? I was like 16 or 17 at the time. And why aren't you hanging out with like everybody else having a good time? And he was just like, oh, I'm on call tonight. And so I'm like, oh, okay. Well, in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't want to have to do that when I'm older. So I would rather be, having fun with everybody. So as superficial as it may sound, that was enough to push me over the edge to pursue dentistry. And so it comes down to the 3 pillars of, I wanted to do something where I was able to make money, have the luxury of time, and to feel fulfilled by, helping other people. So that's what drew me in. And the reality was the exact opposite. I came out of dental school, $500,000 of debt, wasn't really making that much money compared to that. And, I was working 6 days a week and I didn't really feel like I was making a difference with my patients. I kind of felt like I was just kind of in this like hamster wheel, drill and fill bread and butter dentistry. And, I kind of was hoping for more out of the profession. couple years go by. Um, we end up moving down to Texas. I work for a group. We get paired up with mentors and whatnot. And I started to learn how to do aligners. Started over 50 cases in my first 6 months, really just simplifying it and trying to just do, the predictable stuff, talking about it from an oral health perspective. And, um, you know, my entire outlook on dentistry changed because of this one procedure. I was able to make more money, have more time. It's relatively hands off, and I actually felt like I was making a difference. My patients would come back after treatment and they'd say, "Hey doc, like I can actually floss now. This is amazing." And I'm like, "Oh my god, why aren't more people doing this?" And yeah, it was very clear why people weren't doing it. It's because they don't teach you how to do this in dental school. And a lot of the education around the procedure for general dentists is not that accessible. Or and I'm not saying no one else is teaching it, but I just don't think it's as accessible as it can be. And for me, I'd worked in several practices early in my career between DSO, private, Medicaid, everything in between. um, and I just saw that mentorship gap. And so over time basically built uh, a program where we support doctors to start doing this procedure and do it in a way that is simple, predictable, and they have someone, by their side. It's accessible because it's primarily virtual. And like I said, kind of at the beginning, built this not as if I had this, master plan, but more of like, I really wish something like this existed when I was trying to get into this procedure where I could sit down, watch videos that were engaging and easily digestible, watch it from someone that was relatable, right? Like someone going through, a procedure for the first time and really have an understanding of that. And then, not be overwhelming to the point where you show me all this complex stuff, but like make it actionable, make it so I can just go to practice the next week, like the next day and implement it. And so that's kind of the ethos that we have. And so doing that, I didn't really know what would come of it, but when I created this platform, started promoting it on social media, I've grown a pretty big following there. Was nominated or voted Dentist Influencer of the Year, which I didn't know was an award, but it is. And yeah, it's kind of taken a turn of its own. And so then just seeing the opportunity and also just the pull, honestly, from like the universe for me of like, hey, this is my calling and this is what I need to pursue. That's what I've been able to do. So that's the main focus right now is making aligner education accessible to as many dentists as possible.
So, what do you think? So, the liner cases were, do you think that's when the turning point happened for you and got you out of the operatory full time?
Well, so partially, yeah, doing more, basically being able to produce more in less time allowed for me to consolidate my days. So going from 5 days or 6 days a week down to four, down to three, and then while I also had the aligner education program that I was doing on the side, that is what then allowed for me to cut down to even less clinical days. And then eventually going full time on the education business is what then allowed for me to go full time away from seeing patients and focusing on this. Because honestly, traditionally in the education space in dental, it's like KOLs or people being propped up by, different companies. And that's where we're different. We're brand agnostic, so we don't discriminate between the aligners, and we help anybody who wants to get started with aligners regardless of the brand. So I've had to build this from scratch in that sense. Market directly to dentists and be essentially a third party solution. So it's taken a little bit of time, but uh I mean, and I say that um in a very limited scope. It feels like it's taken some time, but in the grand scheme of things, like training over 300 doctors over the span of like 3 to 4 years is pretty significant, which has people remind me of that. So I'm very ambitious. I have high goals. I want to make a difference and an impact. So yeah, sometimes I can kind of downplay that, but yeah, zooming out, we have had a lot of success relatively quickly, and just been juggling, being patient while still making sure that we're helping the right people.
Love that. You're really passionate. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, for DSOs listening, what gap in doctor development or case acceptance are you helping solve through the Clear Aligner Advisor program?
Yeah. So basically, a lot of DSOs have resources and they deploy them in different areas, right? And so one of the biggest things that um, is kind of mutually beneficial is doctor development. And so, you have a lot of dentists that they want to continue to develop their clinical skills. And then you've got DSOs that have the ability to provide that. And I think the gap is though, is the way it's set up right now is most groups don't actually have the people internally to make that happen. And so dialing that a bit further, they may have a chief clinical officer, a chief dental officer. Well, that person has to have expertise in this procedure and also have a desire to actually mentor and educate. And some do. And I've seen groups that have absolutely crushed it. But that only goes so far because they have other responsibilities. They're the chief clinical or dental officer, so it's not, you can't just mentor. And from the ones that I've spoken with, like there's a lot on their plate, and so what we fill is that gap where, hey, you don't have to have someone try to create this person or create this program. It exists. We have a team. We've got a mix of orthos and experienced general dentists that help with the case support side. And we've also got a doctor success team that helps keep the doctors accountable. So that way they have someone in their corner that they can always turn to. And yeah, we help it. We help the groups basically provide value to their doctors so that the doctors can grow without the groups having to stretch thin and use internal resources. So yeah, it's a win-win for everybody, and that's the gap that we're looking to fill.
How does your program integrate in a multi location or group model? Is it scalable for associate training?
Yeah, it is, and we've created it in a way so that you know we see it fitting into the doctor roadmap, right, and doctor development roadmap. And so again, is this going to work for every dentist in your organization? No. The dentist needs to, show interest in the procedure. They need to be willing to, commit themselves to, actually wanting to grow in this direction. I think some mistakes that usually happen with groups is, they'll just roll out programs across the organization and then there's a low adoption rate. Well, if someone's not interested in doing something, it's probably not going to work. So, so in terms of, how we structure it, we make sure that there is that interest, and we do have parameters and success protocols that these doctors have to follow in order for this to work. And we've done that because we've worked with, over 300 dentists to be able to see, okay, of the 300, who's been the most successful, what are their behaviors, and then we reverse engineered that into the program. And so from scalability, yes, it is definitely scalable. Like I said, it's primarily a virtual platform, and then we leverage our team to be able to fill the gaps on the accountability piece. And it can be as as small or as big as the organization wants. But we look to partner with groups that are wanting to have some type of pathway where if they've got doctors where they're raising their hands saying, hey, I want to grow in this direction of aligners. Well, great. We've got a program that you can be a part of. Here it is. And then essentially making the handoff that way. And then we're able to take it and support them.
So, you've worked closely with both solo docs and large organizations. What's the one major mind shift you wish every DSO would adopt about aligner growth?
Good question. So I would say, if it's a DSO, it's more of getting getting the shift to being like figuring out what do your doctors actually want and then deploying resources into that category, right? Or that request. And so, you know, I think sometimes what happens is a lot of DSOs will just get caught up onto the business side of things, which, rightfully so. It is a business. However, the secret sauce or the magic is, the business is going to be more successful if your doctors are feeling fulfilled, right? And if they're feeling like their needs are met. Um, so by doing that, if you want to find out what someone's needs are, you talk to them, right? You talk to them, you engage them, you try to support where you can. Again, I know groups have done this or tried it, and then initiatives have fallen flat on their face because they're like, oh, well, all of our doctors said they wanted to do it, and then we did it, and then they didn't do it. So I would say, yes, that is part of it, but it's, if it was that easy, everyone would be able to do it. I think it's more than just, hey, what do you want? I think it's more a conversation of the why. Cool. You want clinical education? Why is that? Do you want to be more productive? Do you want to feel like you are providing more value to your patients? Do you want to, develop and feel as though you are leveling up? Is it an internal motivation? Like figuring out the why behind the request, I think is key, because once you have that, once you understand the why, the what becomes a lot easier and more clear, because they may say they want something, but their reasoning or their whys doesn't align with it. Then as a leader, you can actually point them in another direction, because maybe they say like, oh, I want to, I want to do implants. And then it's like, okay, well, like why? Well, if I do implants and I can get good at them, and then once I get good at them, I can actually like teach people how to do it. And so it's like, and okay, so you really actually just want to be a leader, like a mentor. Well, how about this? Like you're already doing these things really well. What if we just set up a mentorship program to where you could mentor doctors on these, existing things? Like you're really good at case acceptance. Well, how would you feel if we set up a program where you could be, a case acceptance mentor? Now all of a sudden they're like, yeah, that would be amazing, right? And so I think what happens is when you don't dig into the why, the doctor said implants because they think that's what it is. And then so when you roll out the implant program for them, they're like, no, I don't really want to do implants anymore. And it's just like, well, what happened, right? It's because there's multiple steps. And so I think it's understanding that dentists are humans. We don't always know, right, what we want. We will say what we think we want, but once you dig in and take that time, I think you get that understanding. And then now if you have that doctor and you put them in this mentorship role, it's totally different. Money can't buy that. You have an internally motivated individual now that is their need is being met. Their need for wanting to mentor and feel like they're making a difference is being met. And it sounds simple, but I can guarantee you most DSOs are not doing this.
So, if a DSO wants to increase clear aligner production across its offices, what's the very first thing they should focus on?
I think the first thing that they should focus on is identifying um, interested doctors, right? Okay, who is actually interested in doing this, and then figuring out again, why are you not doing it? Why are you not actually diagnosing and treating? Um, I can tell you right now, most of the time it's clinical confidence, and then you get them a solution to be able to be more confident, and then you have them start to capitalize on the opportunity that's sitting in the practices. Like 80% of patients have some type of misalignment, malocclusion. They could benefit from aligners, and so it's all sitting there. You don't need to throw marketing dollars to attract new patients. You don't have to do any of that stuff. They just need to capitalize on what's sitting in the practices. And then once they have that, that kind of like I say, it opens up the top of the funnel. So now you've got more diagnosis happening, more patients that are, being made aware of this procedure and how it can benefit them. And then the trickle down is then it'll open up opportunities to optimize it, right? Then you can get team training to improve scans, to improve case acceptance. You can get payment solutions to help, make the financial piece easier. So it's a downstream. These are downstream problems, is what I like to call them. Even like treatment planning, optimization, and stuff like that. Like those are all downstream. If the doctor is not confident to identify and diagnose, literally nothing else matters.
How do you keep doctors engaged after the training? So, I know you said that you have a team that holds doctors accountable. How does that work? So, they take your program and then talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So, the biggest thing that we see is, again, one of those needs is doctors feel doctors can feel very lonely, right? Just the nature of a dental office and the practice and the dynamics. I'm sure you've seen it, right? It's just like it's you've got a dentist, and then you've got your hygienists, and then you've got your team. And so they're usually not with other doctors on a day-to-day basis, and if they are, they're busy, and it's in and out type of stuff. So that's one thing that's huge, and that can kind of weigh on them for a while. It can weigh on doctors for a while, and I'm speaking from experience. Like I've been in practices where I was the only one, and yeah, it's just, it gets lonely. And so what we do is, part of the training is they do get the education, so they get a little bit of that kind of that growth from information. And then what we do is we come together once a month, and we do monthly mentorship meetings. And so this is where we get together. We talk about what's going on, what's working, what's not working in the practices, with aligners, and then help them troubleshoot it. And so it's cool because there's this level of connection that's formed where, when you're learning something and growing, if you're doing it with others, you don't feel alone. It feels a little bit, it feels fun. There's an aspect of like, hey, there's people that are going through the same or similar struggles as me. And so that's one way that we do it. We offer CE with that as well. So, they do get credit for that. And then we also support them on the case side. So we have case reviews that we'll be able to do for them. So as they start cases, being able to support them on those as well. And yeah, and kind of coupling all that together, you kind of have this, comprehensive mentorship program to where they're able to get the support that they need from all different aspects.
This is a group and individual, like they help each other as a group, and then you also offer individual help with cases.
Correct. Yeah. So the calls basically is everyone will get on, and we'll have an agenda or topics that we'll touch, whether it's, diagnosis, case acceptance, management, stuff like that. But we keep it about the doctors that are there. And then that way they're able to share. And then we have our team of experts as well on. So like if there's a question that comes up that they don't know how to, navigate, or a dynamic, we're able to help support them on that. And then yeah, in their portal, because what we do for groups is we create an education portal just for their doctors, and they're able to share cases in there and ask questions, and that's where they're able to get a little bit more one-on-one support.
I think that's so important because there's so many questions that come up during the actual clinical therapy of it. You've been very intentional about designing your business to align with your values and your lifestyle. So, what advice would you give to other dentists or DSO leaders trying to do the same?
Yeah. So for me, I've been really into this idea of freedom, right? Freedom is, I think, what a lot of people are striving for in different aspects of life. And so for me, the biggest one was time freedom. And I started this, again, not even knowing what it would be, but I started this from that frame of like, if we have children in the future, I want to be able to drop them off and pick them up from school and not have to trade time for money. And the trajectory that I was on, which was, being in a practice 5 days a week, 6 days a week, it was not really aligning with that. And so part of it, the first step was like, okay, I need to do a procedure that's going to give me a little bit more of that freedom back to where I can produce more in less time, so that way I can at least get a day off. Like that was the first step. And so that was a motivator. Um, and the fact that it is also transformative for patients, huge plus. But I'll be honest, like that's kind of the initial frame. And then the next level of that was like, okay, I'm doing this, I really like teaching people about this, is there something there? And so that's when I got exposed to like one-on-one consulting. So I was like, okay, you know again, consulting, still there is a sense of time for money in that regard. And then all of these decisions then got me to creating a business that was not directly tied to me having to, go to a specific location all the time to be able to have that freedom. And so being able to get very clear. And so this is where I will share for others, whether it's DSO execs or dentists. It's like, get very clear on what you want your end goal to be. What are you working towards? And then you want to make sure that the actions that you're doing today get you one step closer to that. It doesn't need to get you directly there, but you need to get at least one step closer. And so, I know I said this is for dentists and DSO owners, or DSO C-suite, but this is like a message to anybody. Hygienists, it doesn't matter. Anybody out there, it's like, that's my kind of ethos of the more clear that you get on that. The thing is you don't need to know every single step. You just need to know the next step. And is this next step going to get me one step closer? And if it does, great, because, I can say I'm walking proof of that. And, there's still things that I'm working on and working towards, but my life looks very different than it did 4 years ago. And it's because I was, taking these steps.
I really want to thank you today for being on. If our listeners want to contact you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it. Easiest way to contact, LinkedIn, Dr. Avi Patel. I just started becoming very active on there a year ago, but that's an easy way. We have a website. It is clearalineradvisor.co. And we have a tab for, general dentists as well as DSOs. You can book calls through there. And then if anybody's on Instagram, I know some people are, my handle is dr.avi. And any of those channels, I'll be able to help.
Thanks again for being on. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the DSO Hygienist podcast. Please follow or subscribe to be alerted of new episodes.